Well, hi, Dr. Flamo here, and welcome to the tape on sectioning early 30s Ford cars. This sectioning will cover the cars in the Model A era, the 1932s, and on up to 1934, because they all have essentially the same kind of body style. Now, this will be a sectioning job that can be done in your own garage with your own tools, and essentially nothing special or important or expensive needs to be done that would be outside the realm of tools that would be in a normal garage. But it will not cover the interior panels of it. They will not cover the bracketry or sectioning of the radiator. Those are all mechanical problems, and they can be dealt with relatively easily, with the exception of the radiator. That's a little trickier, but it's not something that can't be overcome. The real trick is to how to properly section these particular bodies. Now, let's for a moment just talk about what sectioning really means. And what sectioning is taking a portion out of the body, the main body right here, all the way from the back, right on through the very front, and then taking the top of the body and lowering it down and reattaching it to the lower part, giving a lower, longer, sleeker profile to the car. This is going to be done in both steel, or this can be done in both steel and fiberglass. The particular car that I'm going to be doing it with, which is not this one, but it's a companion one. It's a race car that's another 32.3 window. That one will be in fiberglass. But these techniques that I'm going to be showing you can be done either in fiberglass or in steel. It won't make that much difference. So what I'm really going to be showing you is how to take the stock proportions of the body and then cutting them and then rearranging those pieces back together to produce this nice section job. Now, it may be very scary to take a 32.3 window and be hacking it up. Maybe I shouldn't use that word, but let's say cutting it up, and that's still scary. But the thing is that nowadays there are a nice supply of fiberglass reproduction bodies that are becoming available on the market from projects that didn't work out or weren't completed, and a fairly inexpensive fiberglass body might be obtained and a spectacular car made from that project that didn't turn out. And one of the ways of doing that is to section the body, which gives a very unique look to it. And in fact, as far as I know, there's less than a handful of cars in this particular era of the early 30s that have really ever been truly sectioned. Some of them have been channeled with full fenders, and they give somewhat the same appearance, but they're different. So what I'd like to do now is I would like to show you some of the bodies, or some of the cars, I should say, and their bodies that have been done in the past that are pretty well-known cars, and it will demonstrate the difference between sectioning and channeling, and then we'll go on from there. Well, here we are now in my two-car garage, and what I'd like to do is show you different cars that I have seen through the years that have really influenced me when it came to sectioning the early 30s coupe bodies. The first one that was most important to me was done by a customizer in San Diego named Ray Cook in the late 50s. And I'd like to show you what that car looks like. Okay, this is Ray Cook's sectioned and chopped 34.5 window, and I thought it was an absolutely stunning car. I've never seen anything quite like it before back in the late 50s, but essentially I haven't seen quite anything like it since either. Sectioning in full fender, it has a real nice look to the car where it adds a length and a drama to it that most other cars tend to look bulky after you've seen one of these. So the one thing that is important that I first learned about section early 30s coupe bodies was that the rear molding that comes around the fender right here joins the molding that runs along the belt line, and they join right there. Now here you can see it even better. Here's the fender, rear fender right here that's blocking the molding, but when you get here you can see the molding coming right on up here, and then the belt line comes right along and joins right there, and then they become as one, and then right across the back of the valence. So that is the first full fender early 30s coupe body I saw, and I was enthralled. Let me show you some more. The first 32 three-window that I saw sectioned was this one. And I'd like to slide you in a bit more. Okay, this one is known as the Little Deuce Coupe, three-window coupe. And here it is being shown on Pebble Beach, the lawn, I should say, at Pebble Beach in the year 2001. Thanks to Rodder's Journal. Thank you. And this coupe also has the characteristic of a section body. That is, the molding comes on around here, and the belt line comes on back like this and joins. The reason they do is because that's where the section in the body takes place, and that material, of course, is removed by however much that section is. Now, in contrast to that, let me show you a similar kind of car that is channeled. There. This is a 32 5-window, and you can see that the molding comes around just like the original body does, so there's been no alteration here. What has happened is, of course, that the body has been lowered down by actually easing it down either side of the frame rails after removing the floor. So the cars do look similar in height, but there's been one method done with the sectioning and the other one with the channeling. And of course that is this section of the body that comes right through here and then right through there. This part has not been taken out. Okay, so now I was interested in seeing if there was any 32 3-windows that were full fendered, and I found this one. And this is Eric Perkins' car right here. And at first I thought it was a section car, but as soon as I got close enough I realized that the body panel was still intact. And in fact, even the top is still intact. This is an example of a car that has been channeled and full fendered, but neither chopped nor sectioned. Here's another example of one that has been chopped but not sectioned. It's channeled. This is Jim Lytle's car of Allison engine being stuffed into anything fame. And he's got a chopped top 32 5-window, and it's full fendered. But what he did was he went and just relocated the fender on the side of the body. There is no molding around here, though that does have a look of a 32 that has been sectioned. But notice that the body right here comes all the way down to the running board and does not show any part of the frame, and therefore the body has been channeled. Now the one 34 3-window that I've ever seen, the only one that I've ever seen, is this one. And this one is also at Pebble Beach, 2001. And it is the car that was also a San Diego car done by Joaquin Arnett of the Bean Bandits. And this to me is one of the most favorite sectioned and full fendered coupes that I've ever seen. And this one has that same characteristic where a section was taken right out through the body here, and then the molding comes right on up and it joins right there. So after studying this car, I decided that I wanted to build a 32 3-window that was like this one. Though actually, as I found out later after talking to Joaquin, we approached it in different ways, and I'm going to show you that in a moment, where we actually solved the same problem going in opposite directions. But to me, this is the top car when it comes to chopped and sectioned full fendered coupes. So now let's take a look at a diagram on actually how the surgery should begin. Okay, now that we have seen bodies that have been authentically sectioned, let's just see where those cuts are made. Okay, on like I say, the Model A's, the 32s, and 34s, they all have the same basic geometry. So I picked a 32-3 window because that was the one that I chose to section. So this is a stock body 32-3 window, and I decided that to bring these two together, I needed to reduce the body height by 4 3/4 inches. 4 3/4 inches. So let me take you in closer to where we can talk about the actual cuts. Okay, here we are, and I have put a dashed line where I wanted the upper cut to go, like that, and where the lower cut should go through here. The first thing I want to mention is that the upper cut is going to run parallel with the molding that comes along here like this, but it is not going to be directly under the molding. And the reason for that is if you're working with a steel body or a fiberglass body, you're going to have to do repair work right where that surgery is. And the molding piece that runs along this belt line is a nice fine detail in the body that you don't want to have to work to replace if you endanger it. So take the hazard of the cut down 1 full inch from the body molding, and then make the cut, the upper cut, run right along that section. One of the easiest ways to do that is to simply get a piece or a roll of 1 inch masking tape and just roll that tape out so that the upper part of the tape is just touching the bottom part of the molding. And then just take it right on back into this section right here. Now from here on, we got to talk about this. But for right here, for right now, that cut goes right along there, and of course extends right out, right out through the grill shell, like that. Now, I expect no problem at all of taking this section out of the grill shell and then welding the top to the bottom. And the reason for that is there's nice parallel lines here and here, so they ought to just join right on up. In exactly the same way, the hood section from here to here is essentially a rectangle. If you ignore this, well, even if you do see the bottom part, it's a rectangle. So if we take this section out that goes right along this area and then weld the bottom to the top, we still don't have any problem. It's when we get into areas where there are diagonal lines which create offsets, and when there are converging curves, things get a bit confusing. So let's talk about those areas. I'm going to take this knife blade and I'm going to actually do the surgery right across the top of this diagram and remove the top from the bottom. Brace yourself, here we go. Okay, I come across the grill shell, right across the hood. I'm actually going a little bit low just so you can see the dotted line. And the cut just continues right on through the door and into the rear quarter panel. Like that. Now I stop. And the area back here is a big unknown, and that's why I've got this big question mark. The one thing I do know is that when these two join, the bottom part of this molding that goes along and outlines the fender will be the bottom part of that joined molding. And I know also that this part up here, this belt line molding, the top portion of that molding will be the top part of that. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to take the cut, and this is what you would do in real life too. Take the cut and run it up into the molding for the top cut, and then run right down the center line of that molding, like that. In doing that, you preserve the top part of the molding to use later. And then from here, we just exit. Stage left. Now let's see if we've got this cut. Oh, beautiful deuce coupe. Okay. Now here's the bottom part of the body, and it has been unaltered in wheelbase or in anything else. Now I'm going to rejoin this piece up here to where the lower cut should be. So I'm going to get a couple pieces of meskin tape, and I'll get right down here, and I will put this guy right back together again. Okay, now when I do this, I have to pay attention to vertical lines. I've got an offset here that does not look good, and an offset here from the straight line of the door. So when I bring this body down, I also have to pay attention to how it lines up. And I want it to line up where the door comes straight on down. So now I'll move this back until finally it sits right there. And how's the front portion doing here? It's right there. Whoops, now it's down. Like that, and like that. Okay, now I'll just put this tape right back. There. The car is now sectioned. Okay, there was no problem with the grill shell. We figured that that wouldn't be the case. And these lines line right up with the hood panel. But see right here, we have an offset. And that's because the door came down at an angle. So we have a problem there. Okay, the rear door and the top hinge and the bottom hinge still remain. The middle hinge, let's sneak this little shot right there, that got wasted with the section. But we still have the extreme top and bottom hinge. That's what we want the best for the best structure of the door. So this part's just rosy. Now right here is where these two come together badly. Notice that the top part of this molding here cuts right across the bottom part, or this molding here at the bottom. And then this actually starts going into the fender. So we've got a problem right here also. These are the two main problems. Okay. First, let's take a look at the door section. Okay, here is a blow-up of that door section where the top is cut down. Here is the surgery that took place right through here. The 4 3/4 inches has been removed, and the top now has been brought down to the bottom and attached back along those lines. And here is this offset of the door. Well, one of the situations that can be done, here's one solution. I happen to have another stock door just sitting around in the back of the garage I found here. So here's the door before it was sectioned. But you will see that there is still that line where the section cut would have been made. But if I took the door before I sectioned and cut it and left it alone, then see this line that comes right down here? It would do just fine. It would line right on up. The problem is that the door jamb is now too far away, and I have to cut the door bottom off to fit in this new hole. And it would look something like this. Let me sort of darken that up a little bit more here for you. Okay, so if I use this method, I would have to cut off this section of the door and then reshape this portion of it. I would also have to move the door jamb over because there's a big open gap right in here. And another problem with this is that even though the top hinge lines up beautifully, neither this hinge nor this hinge line up with that particular one. So we're going to have to shift the hinges around if we use that method. There's another method, and that is, here's the door as we have just seen it put together. Now, if you went and welded the section door to the top, you would have alignment on the hinges, but you would have this protruding portion sticking out. So you're going to have to bring this lip back in this direction. And of course, this door jamb that was in the cowling, that's going to have to move in the same direction also. So what I first am going to do is to make a straight vertical cut from the section point where the car was sectioned, just straight on down, straight arrow as I can, right on down to the lower molding. And that will cut this door jamb section free. Okay? And then I will do the same thing for the door. And here's where the door jamb, where the curvature of the door comes down and meets the molding. And I want to come back at least, whatever this offset is right here, at least that much and perhaps a little more. So perhaps maybe, I don't know, let's say 150% of what this offset is. Okay? So I measure this offset, and then I come over here and I come, at this point, move back 150% and make this cut right here. So now I've got two cuts. This one's right here, and that one's right there. Now I want to move this, of course, this panel back into this one by whatever that offset is. So I measure it, whatever it is, and it happens to come out about right there and about right there. So I make another cut in this door that looks like that. So now I have these two cuts, and this portion I'm going to remove. There. So now, once having removed this, I can take this portion and I can slide it right on back until there. It lines right up, and I just weld it right back on this line. And interestingly enough, the material that came out of here, which was the amount of offset, can then be taken and put right back in here when you move the door jamb forward. Now fortunately, the door jamb behind the parting line of the door is all in this direction. So you will want to make that initial cut come fairly close to this just for structural reasons. But then again, the nice thing is that whatever you cut out of here, which has the right crown and curvature of the door, will fit right back in there. Whoops, let me get that straight, a little bit straighter there. Will fit right back into this zone. You weld it right back up, and now you've got a perfectly good fitting door. So now let's go to the next problem, which is the one in the back. Okay, now here's a diagram of the rear portion of the car before it has been sectioned. This now represents just a stock 32 Ford body. And the lower portion right here is a print of the rear fender. Here's the rear fender coming up. The car is going in that direction. And here's the top, and the rear portion of the top has been done on plexiglass to be able to give some kind of transparency, which of course we're going to use in just a moment here. And there's also some ghosting right here. So I want to put some tape right there, just for a moment, just to hold it down. Okay, now here we are with the stock 32 Ford body, and the rear molding is coming along right here, and it curves on down and then forms a little radius where it joins the molding that comes around where the perimeter of the rear fender is, right there. So here's the rear fender, and now it's time to go ahead and section it. And I've written down here the distance that I'm going to section it, which is 4 3/4 inches. So I'll remove this tape wrench here and get out the hacksaw and cut this baby out. Now I'll run that on down. Let me just check that for a moment. There we go. And I'll hold that. And there. Now, I want to hold this plastic on like that. So now, there you get an example. Oh, excuse me, I haven't got that quite straight. Let's do this really good. There we go. And there. Now, this is an example of the problem in the rear that we saw in the main diagram of the full body. Namely, that this molding right here comes down and it crosses the molding that the perimeter of the rear fender has. So it doesn't make a junction. It crosses and then it continues on down into the fender section. And this rear molding comes on through, crosses, and then goes into the rear body section. So therein lies the problem. So what some customizers have done when they come across this problem is they will move the rear fender forward. Let's just go right ahead and do that. Okay, so this fender moves forward until finally, now what I'm doing is I'm looking at this molding coming around here, and I want to see where it joins this one nicely. So I've got to move it just a little bit further, like that. Okay, now I'll put my little piece of tape right there. Okay, now we got the problem solved. See, here's the rear molding coming on down like this, and here's the molding coming around the perimeter of the rear fender, and here they are coming into this point, and they're joining into one, and it is a lovely marriage. However, there's a bit of a price to pay for this approach, and that is if you move the rear fender forward, then you have to cut out a section in the rear quarter panel for the fender to move into that area, because the fender, of course, carries the wheel well with it. And the wheel well will occupy this area right in here. So there's quite a bit of surgery that you have to take place to make room for the rear wheel. And, of course, the rear wheel is going to carry the axle with it. And the axle is going to carry the whole powertrain with it, so you have to shorten up the powertrain. And, of course, when you do that, then all the suspension has to move forward, and, of course, the frame has to be surgically altered by whatever distance you run this fender forward, so that the axle will then line up again inside the fender well. Now, that's a lot of work. I mean, there's some real pain involved there, and I'm lazy. I don't want that kind of work. So, this is another approach. I'm going to move this guy back to where it was. Now we still have the same conflict of the crossing right here of these two moldings. What I would propose doing is, instead of moving the rear fender forward, I'm taking this top portion and this rear portion of the upper part of the section body and moving it backward. So I'm going to move that guy backwards right about there. Let's see if I can get it nice and parallel and straight. And then I will surgically attach it right there, and I want to catch this little part right here, that plexiglass. Okay, now let's take a look at the section again. Here's the rear molding that's coming around the upper portion of the fender, and here's the upper molding and the body belt line, and they come on down right here, and they join as one, just beautifully. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, hey, that's just the same thing. But it's not. I mean, the end result is the same. But the whole bottom portion now of that body has been unaltered. There's been no frame surgery, no wheel well or drivetrain surgery, and this body now will fit on any other stock 32 Ford frame around. It is actually totally unaltered. The only alteration now has been made to this top section moving backwards. So let's see what this approach does when we go back and look at the full body diagram. Okay, now here's the diagram that you saw me just cut up a little while back, and it is the stock 32 lower portion of the body and the upper portion of the body, and I have lowered this down the full section of the 32 of the 4 3/4 inches, excuse me. Now the offset that was in the door, we've already taken care of that, and it's this area back here we want to look at to verify that in the diagram that we just got through seeing is really going to work. So I've got this attached now. Now what I want to do is I want to make a surgical cut right through this top and all the way down to where the surgery was made right here. And I want to do it parallel to this angle that is in the B-pillar. So first of all, before I make the cut, let me take away these shadows by just putting some tape there. There. Now you can sort of get a real good look at what the body is going to turn out to be. And let me just remove this one. I've got some scuzz on that tape, and I don't want scuzz. I want clean. So here's another piece of tape that is clean. There. So now there is a stock 32 that has been just sectioned. Now what I'm going to do is make a surgery right through that stock rear portion at the top that's parallel to this and back about 2 inches, and just cut right on down through. And then this part is now free, and I am going to move it back. Like that. And I'll put another piece of masking tape to hold it right there. And I'll take some other tape to hold this down so you can see what it looks like without the shadow. And there. There is a 32 Ford 3-window full fendered coupe that has been sectioned 4 3/4 inches. And all I have to do now, instead of doing all the work in the lower area by moving this fender forward, all I have to do now is just fill in this one gap right here, and I'm sort of done. Now, when you're doing a classic chop job, you already fill in an area right there anyway because the pieces move apart. So this isn't any more difficult to do this than it is to do a regular standard top chop. So this is the direction I'm going. Now you're probably wondering what this would look like with both a chop top and a section, because this is still the stock top right here. Well, I have the answer to that too. Here is the same drawing that I have chopped the top on also. There. And now this is a regular standard chop top. This is where in fact you might even see the ghosting of this line where I made the cut right there. I just took this regular print and just cut and repositioned the pieces. So I cut out the section of the chop and then line the A-pillar right back up again. And when you do that, you actually move these pieces apart, and there becomes a gap right in the center section that if you're aware of chop tops, you know all about that. So you have to add in about 1 to 2 inches. I think it's around 2 inches in the center section right there. But that's what it would look like for a full fender 32 Ford with a chop top and a section. And I think that looks pretty hot. However, it might even get better. If you used a Bonneville chop, it would look like this. got some scuzz on my tape there. Anyway, who cares? Let me get this undone and redone there, just so it doesn't have any wrinkles. And like that. Okay. Now this is a section coupe that has a Bonneville chop, and a Bonneville chop is one where there has been no cut in the top here at all to space it apart. What has happened is that the A-pillar has been leaned back whatever the distance is needed, so that this remains uncut right here. And also the other thing is the roof is slightly raked, about a ½ an inch difference between the B-pillar and the A-pillar, and that gets away from this square pillbox look. This just looks like, to me, like a square rectangular box, where this has a lean back post and the slight rake that gives it a little bit more of an attitude. So there you have it. That is how the cuts are going to be made in this 3-window deuce coupe, full fendered, that is going to be produced with this particular method. Excuse me. Let me slide right in front of you here. There's one thing I wanted to add before we leave these two coupes, and that is there is a valance area that's right in here that goes from side to side, and it is sandwiched between the bottom lid of the trunk, which is right up here, and, excuse me, that's not true. Let's say right about here. And there's the top of the gas tank. And it goes from side to side, so of course we can't handle that in these kind of diagrams. But the other reason is that that particular valance, though not difficult, needs to be done during the actual construction of the body. So that will not be done with diagrams. It will actually be done in part 2 of this sectioning tape, which actually shows the construction of a 32 Ford 3-window coupe down into both a chopped and, of course, the section condition, and it will be the one with the Bonneville chop on it. So I would suggest that we move on, but first, before we leave this, I would like to say that it's a good idea that if you have any pictures of the car that you plan to section from a straight-on side view, it would be a good idea to take some of those pictures and actually do the sectioning, just like we did on these coupes, in the picture to see what you're actually going to wind up with before you commit yourself. And if you like what you see, then move on. And I went and did that with a picture of my race car where it was just strictly a chopped top with a very aggressive rake because I was using it for racing. So I wanted downforce on that car, so it's tipped a little bit more than most Bonneville chops would be. But it helped plant the car at high speed, which is just what I wanted. So I wanted also to find out what that car would look like after it had had a section. So I took this one picture that I'll show you, and I sectioned the picture. And I'll show you how that turned out. Okay, now this is what my coupe looked like before I decided to section the body. It has the Bonneville chop, which has got 4 inches taken out of the windshield and 3 inches out of the back. And therefore, it's fairly aggressive, but it really gave a good downforce. Then what I did was I took the picture, this one in particular, and I sectioned it 4 3/4 inches. And this is what I had. Now, notice that the body, even though it looks longer and lower and somewhat more sleeker, it does not have the bulk that the first one had, but it still is going to fit on a stock 32 frame anywhere in this world. Now, let's go back and take a look at the earlier one before the section. See the bulk in the body compared to the top? And then when we take a section out of the body of 4 3/4 inches, then everything comes back into real nice proportion. So this now gave me the courage to go ahead now and put the blade to my Deuce Coupe. Well, there you go. Now that you have seen the diagrams and had explained all the cuts that are taken from just stock body parts, there was nothing restyled or any pie-shaped cuts made and the forms changed. All that was done that you've seen in the diagrams were done with the stock parts that were simply cut and repositioned and then put back together. So now if you think that you've got all the information that you need and you're ready to go wail on somebody, hey, well, tally-ho, you go right ahead. But if you would like to actually see, before you slice into that beautiful little coupe, what it was like to actually build one and to do all the piecing and how it went all together, then you're probably going to want to see part 2 of this sectioning tape. So if you do, then I'll see you there.